we're going to have a really fun time, and it's going to be informational. And of course, you see that we have plenty of food, coffee, tea, and wine, so please make yourselves at home. We're going to stay afterwards so we can have an informal conversation. But I also wanted to let you guys know how this meeting began. This was a few months ago. Vicki and I are walking down Brickell, right? This is our usual walk, and we're talking about politics, you know, and our stride is going a little bit faster because usually it's a kind of an unhappy subject. But then we got into talking about a trip that we had done 2 years ago in October to Casadaga. And when we were coming back, we were not driving, okay? And we had 4.5 hours to try to decide what are we going to do with 4.5 hours. And we said, let's look up all of the candidates and the amendments for the presidential elections in November. Lo and behold, we didn't know very much about any of the candidates or any of the amendments. And I think, I don't know if you remember, but Amendment 1 was the Florida Power and Light, the solar panels, which sounded fantastic. It sounded like, wow, Florida Power and Light, you know, everybody's gonna have solar panels, everything is gonna be great, but really, what they did is they wrote legal language in there to prevent any competitors, and Florida Power and Light basically wanted to take over the entire market. So, thank God, we voted no, and so did Florida. But as we're walking, and we're still walking here, Vicki tells me, you know, this year we're having amendments that we only vote on every 20 years in the midterm elections. I said, really? I haven't heard about that. I mean, I don't really know my civics, I guess, very well. So she starts telling me, and we start walking faster, and our heart starts pumping, and the adrenaline is going, and we're like, this time we're going to inform as many people as we can. So thus, here we are, okay? And on Facebook, hopefully. So our hope and our desire for today is that you not only become informed, but that you pass it forward and that you vote, because voting is a right and a huge responsibility, and I think we take our democracy for granted so many times. You know, we don't know how it's like to live in a country where you can't have free speech and be in a group like this and share your opinion, you know, whether you agree or don't disagree with the government. So I am proud to introduce Vicki, and I'm actually going to read a little bio on her, because I think that even though a lot of you know Vicki, you don't know this side of Vicki.
You don't know.
And there is a real reason why she's standing here and doing this informative meeting today. So Vicki is a well-respected authority in government and community relations. Her expertise includes education, underserved communities, healthcare, affordable housing, and criminal and juvenile justice issues. Vicki consults with local, state, and national government officials, policymakers, and stakeholders on a variety of issues. She has considerable experience in the areas of public policy, research and analysis, media and public relations, public speaking, government and community relations, public affairs, advocacy, communications, consensus and team building, fundraising, finance, accounting, budgeting, strategic planning, training and development, management and administration.
That's 40 years.
So Vicki runs her own government relations and public affairs company called VLL Consulting. Engaged in community relations, statewide political consulting and fundraising, communications strategies, public policy development, external affairs, government relations, and public affairs on behalf of national, state, and local clients, with a specialty in nonprofit consulting and advocacy. She's been engaged in public service for the last 25 years. She is a former Lee County Commissioner and has also received several gubernatorial appointments from Governors Bush, Christ, and Scott. As a result, she has been invited throughout the country to participate and present her experience and expertise to a wide audience. Vicki, and I'm saying Vicki because you're one
right
of us
here.
instead of saying Miss Lopez, but she is Miss Vicki Lopez, is an alumna of Leadership Florida and Leadership Miami. She was an active member of the Junior League of Miami and is a sustainer member of the Junior League of the Palm Beaches. She is also a board member of the Junior Leagues of Florida State Public Affairs Committee. She is a former board member of the Women's Fund of Miami-Dade County. She is also a motivational speaker who has been invited to speak in various venues on a number of different topics. She graduated from the University of Notre Dame with a BBA degree in accounting. So with no further ado,
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Let's get on with the show. This is really important stuff. We're going to be talking about constitutional amendments, and what those are amending the Florida Constitution. So when I talk about it, a lot of people say, oh, is that the U.S. Constitution? No. On your ballot will be amendments that amend the Florida Constitution. So what is it? Because you're going to hear a lot of people talking in the next 60 days before the election, and we're down to 60 days starting today, about what's the purpose of the Constitution. You know, you're going to hear a lot of people say, I'm voting no across the board because they don't belong in the Constitution. So you should ask yourself, what should be in the Constitution? Currently, the articles in the Constitution usually are things that describe how the government should work. So we have articles of the way the legislature should work, the way the executive branch should work, the way the judiciary should work. We have suffrage and elections, so how elections should work. We have finance and taxation, which describe how we have no income tax. That's part of our Constitution. We have local governments, how they should interact with each other and with the state government. And then we have miscellaneous and a couple of amendments. The first Constitution was actually implemented in 1838, so we're not very old, believe it or not. The current Constitution was ratified on November 5th of 1968, and it's been modified by initiative and referendum several times since then. We have had 398 ballot measures in Florida from 1886 to 2016. That is a very big number. If I showed you other states, very few states amend their Constitution. Why? Because the question is, does it belong in the Constitution or should it be legislated? Should it be a law as opposed to a basis of your running of your government? We have had, it's been spread over 70 years, 287 of those 398 were actually approved, and 111 were defeated. When they go out to vote, you need a 60% approval, right? So it's not good enough to get 50% of the population to approve it. Because you're amending your Constitution, the level of comfort, if you will, requires a greater majority of citizens, voting citizens. So you're going to need 60% for all of these, but that's going to be, there's another tell sign about what's going to happen here. How do you amend the Florida Constitution? This is an important thing. There are 5 ways that you amend it. By the Florida Legislature taking a 3/5 vote of both houses. Hard to do, 3/5 of each house. By Constitution Revision Commission, that is the group that has just placed 8 amendments on the ballot. They meet every 20 years. They are appointed by the governor and the legislature. This year, approximately, I think it was almost 80%, well, I think I've written it here somewhere where you'll see. You'll see that they first met in 1977, again in 97, and now in 2017. So they meet every 20 years. This is their chance to go around the state, talk to citizens, and decide, okay, what do we need to do to change the Constitution? Which I think the whole process is completely flawed. I mean, think about it for a second. When you get to when we get to who's on that commission, you're going to see why you should be questioning what happened here. And they've only done it 3 times. By the Taxation and Budget Reform Commission, they also meet every 20 years, right? They first met in 2007. They will meet again in 2027. And they consist of 25 members appointed by 11 of the governor, 7 of the president of the Senate, and 7 of the House. Now, I want you to understand why it becomes political. The governor in this state, for the last 20 years, the governor's been a Republican. And for the last, I'm just going to say in excess of 20 years, both the House and Senate have been Republican dominated. Hey, Mary Kate, come on. Oh, come on in. So this is why it's an important factor, because don't kid yourself. No matter what party is overseeing these 3 branches, they are protecting their own party by putting their own people. That's the way it works. Then you have the Constitutional Convention, which I have not seen. It probably happened back in the 1800s, where a simple majority approval of voter initiative calls for a convention. So voters would put an initiative on the ballot and they would call for a convention, much like a political convention. And there they would hammer out language, and that's how we would amend the Constitution. It's rare. I can't imagine. I don't even know that citizens know that they have the right to do this, but it's an interesting way of governing and a way of changing. And then lastly, by voter initiative. And you're going to see that there are some amendments this year that were by voter initiative, where you collect enough signatures in order to get it on the ballot. All the signatures have to be validated before they're allowed in. But here's what happens. They are held to a higher standard. Interesting, right? That the citizens are held to a higher standard. They're limited to a single subject, and I want you to appreciate that when we go through some of these amendments. A single subject. The ballot title cannot exceed 15 words. The ballot summary cannot exceed 75 words. So if you're trying to explain something to people, you got 75 words to do it. And you must include a financial impact statement that does not exceed 75 words. Right? Now you think to yourself, wow, that's a heavy burden. Yeah, it should be, right? So let's focus on the Constitution Revision Commission, because it just finished its work in March and it issued its. As we said, it convenes every 20 years. Now I want you to see something. Of the 37 members, 34 were Republicans. Important to note. Important to note. They were appointed by the governor. The governor appointed 15 plus the chair. Important to note. Why? Because I have chaired commissions for governors, and I'm in charge. I'm in charge of the agenda. I'm in charge of what gets done. I'm in charge of what gets reported. I'm in charge.